Hey, how's it going? Paul Reid here. Today we're going to be looking at a brass quintet number one written by Victor Ewald. It was his fifth opus, and we're going to be looking specifically at the first movement today. Just a bit of an overview. It's a sonata allegro form, so nothing too crazy that we're not used to. Composed in the late 1800s, 1890 to be specific, and it's a really standard brass quintet rep. The whole quintet pieces. A lot of people know this piece, and I've played it actually this past summer in Michigan. It's really a beautiful piece. I love it a lot, and it's in B flat minor, so keep on the lookout for that. And let's take a look at the whole piece right now. See, I told you it was a beautiful piece. Alright, so let's take a look at the exposition here in the large scale form. So it starts right off with a primary theme, and we have that for about 17 measures, as you can see here in my diagram. Now, right about here in the second phrase, it looks like it's already a transition, but because there's a PAC all the way over here, you can also see it right here in my diagram, that means that this isn't a transition and it doesn't happen until afterwards. So here's where when we get to transition, something like that. And so it leads to medial caesura. And what's really interesting about this medial caesura is that it's really a medial caesura fill, because we have this medial caesura and there's 5 bars of content until we get to the secondary theme right here. But the thing is, you can also argue that it's an elision between the transition and the secondary theme. And so I think it's just both. And that's how I marked it in my diagram. You can see here medial caesura fill, and then I also elided the transition with the secondary theme. And let's take a listen to that and you'll see what I mean. So yeah, you can see it kind of just feels like it's both a part of the transition and a part of the secondary theme, because they just kind of meld together. Alright, more of the exposition. So the secondary theme keeps going on for another phrase, and then eventually we hit the EEC over here right at the end of the secondary theme. And there's no closing section here, surprisingly, but there is a very small codetta that lasts for 1 bar, pretty much. It barely gives itself like the closure that you can feel from a codetta, but it's there, rest assured. Let's take a look at the development now. Alright, so here we have the development, and you can see where I have the word imitation marked, that there's a double bar line there. Now, typically, the double bar line there would lead you to think that that's where the development starts after we had all the secondary theme and everything. But really, the development starts just a few bars before that, where you can also see that I have it marked, because there's no closing section to the secondary theme. And so, even with the codetta, nothing feels like it really just sort of ends. Like, you can feel a bit of closure from that, but then it's very brief, and then the development just picks up with all this harmonic tension and a lot more rhythmic movement leading into where that double bar line is. And so the development actually starts before that double bar line. And then once we get there, we have a pre-chor that's based off of the opening theme from the tuba, the ba ba da 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 ba da da bum, but it's a lot more rhythmic and percussive in it, and it's just transposing. It's just a literal transposition between every instrument. It's sort of a bit of a fugue on it, building up to the top. And then that takes us to the chord, where we have 17 bars of just one chord, based on the sequence of these sforzando half notes, the bum, 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 bum. And then in between that, we have a lot more of like the opening theme again, the bum, ba da 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 dum bum. And then it goes back to those sforzando quarter notes. And eventually that keeps sequencing on for a while, 17 bars, and then that brings us to the retransition, sorry. And so we have a retransition for 10 bars that brings us back to the dominant, and then back to the home key, where we get to our recapitulation. Alright, and so here we are back in the recapitulation. Really a lot like the opening in the first 2 phrases we have, just a primary theme again, but then in the second phrase that we have, it's like the opening theme, but then it's cut in half. We have the building movement of like the 16ths, the bum bum ba-dum bum 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 bum, but then instead of having like that that really nice PAC that we had there before, it just cuts that short. And so it's just an antecedent right there. And then that brings us to transition. And then there's a lot of movement there with the transition and bringing us back again to the secondary theme, the same as before. And so we have a secondary theme for about as long as before, how we did earlier, 17 bars, you can see in my diagram. And then that keeps going on, and interestingly enough, we don't actually have the ESC within the secondary theme. The secondary theme ends and brings us to a coda that gets into a Piemoso in 2. But Ewald does this thing where he procrastinates just about as much as we do with our homework, and he keeps putting off the ESC until the very end when he possibly can't do it any later. And so he puts it there like right after this coda, pretty much about 8 bars from the end or so. And then after that he has a cadential echo on it too, which is a really nice touch to it. And that's about it for the large scale form. Alright, and so now we have some motives. These are just like two really big ones that happen throughout. We have this eerie melody, the ba ba da 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 dum. Those weren't the right pitches, of course, but it opens with the tuba playing that, and then basically every voice, every instrument in the quintet plays this at some point or another in some transposition or other. And then we have the cantabile line, the ba ba da 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 dum. And that gets played a lot, mostly in the secondary themes. You see that in both the exposition and the recapitulation in the secondary themes, and it's just this really gorgeous, sweet melody that passes from one instrument to the next, usually. And these are pretty much the two most prominent ones as far as lyricism in the piece is concerned, but there's also many more to come. Alright, so if we take a look at some of the harmonic motion that Ewald puts into the exposition, nothing is really out of the ordinary here. It starts in B flat minor, and then he takes us to the relative major in D flat major, Roman numeral number 3. Now when we get to the medio caesura, the piece cadences in a half cadence in 1, but then immediately after that medio caesura, it's just in 3. Where we have that medio caesura fill, it just starts already in 3, which is kind of interesting. There's no really lead into it or anything like that. And then the EEC occurs at the end of the exposition just before the codetta happens, that little 1-bar codetta. Alright, now in the development we have some interesting things that happen, such as our development keys are mainly the supertonic 2, and then also the subdominant 4, A flat minor, which is just fantastic, and then we also have E flat minor. When we have the sequences that I was talking about earlier, it really mainly just shifts between those two keys, and then eventually we get to the retransition, and that just boom lands right on the dominant in a half cadence. And what's interesting to look at the retransition is that it's really just standing on the dominant the whole time. The tuba part just has Fs in octaves the whole time, so the whole retransition is just standing on the dominant, leading up until when we get back to the primary theme in the recapitulation. And so here we are back at the recapitulation. Again, it starts in 1 B flat minor and transitions briefly to B flat major just for a moment. Really only one phrase. And then throughout the whole thing, there's a lot of deceptive cadences, especially in the coda at the end. There's a lot of deceptive cadences that we see where Ewald is trying to keep pushing off the ESC, and that's what he uses to really get around that. And then you can see, again, the ESC is delayed until the very end of the piece, but when we get there, it really secures that it's a minor mode key. And there's a cadential echo after the ESC. And I have this diagram here that you can see where I showed the cadential echo and also the hybrid 3 that happened before it, where you can see the PAC, and that's where the ESC happens, right there in the middle. and then we have that 8-bar cadential echo where there's another PAC that's just it's there, and it just gives you a nice little feeling of, oh yeah, this is in a minor key, cool, as it just finishes and dies quietly off. Alright, so let's do some detailed analysis. Here we have our first Kaplan theme type model example. It's really straightforward. It's just a normal Kaplan hybrid number 4 theme type from the very beginning. And the only thing that Ewald really does with it is that in the 8th bar, instead of just doing a normal cadence like a half cadence or a PAC, he does a deceptive cadence, leaving you wanting more and going like, oh no, like where's the closure? And so after that he hits you up with the one more time technique, which then he gives you the PAC after that. And it's really pretty effective. It's nice to listen to. It's a straightforward phrase, 10 bars, and in the beginning you have a basic idea, contrasting idea, just making up a compound basic idea with no cadence there. And then he has a basic idea again, contrasting idea, which that last one is for the one more time technique that we saw. And right now we can just take a little listen to it, and you can hear the cadential repetition that Ewald does. Oops. No cadence here. And here's the deceptive cadence. And then a PAC at the end. Alright. So now, we have a non-normative Kaplan theme type. Now these two phrases are actually just the next two phrases after where we just stopped. They seem pretty normal, except they have a few things that's really off about them. Basically, Ewald just wrote in a bunch of fragments. In this first phrase, it's actually just a continuation rather than being something like a hybrid or anything. And he does that by making the first bar a fragment, and then the next full bar is also a fragment. And after that, he has another 2 bars, but within that, he divides them up both in half. So between those 2 bars, those 3rd and 4th bars there, he has 4 fragments. So just in the first 4 bars, there's 6 fragments, which is a huge continuation. And then after that, he has a cadential idea for 3 bars with a PAC in it. It sounds really cool and awesome. And then after that, we have the next phrase, which is a hybrid 3. And he sort of does the same thing here with dividing up a measure. First, he has a basic idea for 2 bars, but then he has a a contrasting idea, but he only does it in 1 bar for the contrasting idea. But the thing is, it still has the feeling of a full 2-bar cadential, or a full 2-bar contrasting idea. And the reason it has that feeling is because he divides the bar up in half again. He has, if I were to sing there, well, actually, let's just take a listen, because that'd be better than my singing. And you can feel the fragments here. Basic idea. You can feel how the bar was divided in 2. And another interesting thing that Ewald does here with this last phrase was that instead of putting the half cadence at the end where the cadential idea was, he puts it where the first fragment is. And so for those whole last 4 bars, the half cadence has already happened. And what we're experiencing there is standing on the dominant, essentially. The tuba player just is belting out a bunch of dominants right there. And so the half cadence happened early, and we're standing on the dominant to the end of that phrase. Alright, now we have some themes and motives. Again, there's that opening theme that we had, the ba-ba-da-da-da-da-da-dum, basically. And it comes back a lot throughout the piece. You can see I have some other little snippets, like we have a snippet of the development where it's really broken up in more percussive, ba ba da bum bum ba da bum bum bum, and then every voice picks it up after that. But it's still the same motive there. And then at the very end in the coda, that's what the other little screen cap on the right is. At the PMoso, bum ba da dum bum ba da bum. It's again a little percussive idea on the same motive. It's a little more broken up than before though. And we have some other notable themes and motives, such as the cantabile line that I mentioned earlier, the bum ba da 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 dum. And that, I think pretty much every voice plays that at some point or another, and it's just really beautiful passing on to each instrument after hearing one do it. And again, I said earlier, that happens in mainly the secondary themes throughout the piece. Another interesting thing that we have is we have a lot of ascending 16th notes that happen. Like you could hear leading either into the development, or where we had the development start leading into that double bar line, or where I just showed you with those fragments in that where we had all those little half fragments. There's a lot of ascending 16th notes, mainly in the trombone. And that happens a lot throughout the piece. Like that seems to be Ewald's like favorite rhythmic activity that he writes. And it happens later throughout all the voices too, in the transition and the recapitulation. It trades off between all the voices, and that's where the second screenshot on the very right is from. And then we have what I like to call the intervallic leaps of faith. These happen mainly in the development, and it's just some hard intervals to play. I've played it before, and sometimes you just gotta pray a little bit that you're gonna hear it before you play it. And that happens mainly just throughout the development, but it's really sequential in there, and so that happens quite a lot in there. Ba-bum, 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 and those go up and down sometimes. Alright, and for the most striking harmonic moment that I found in this to be would be from that phrase we were looking at earlier with the fragments, that big continuation. Because when we get to the end of it and we have the cadential idea, there's just a bar at the beginning of the cadential idea, and then in the second bar of those 3 bars of cadential idea is where we have the PAC. And you can feel like wholeheartedly that's a PAC, but the thing is the transition hasn't started yet, and on the next bar you can feel what's almost like an IAC in 3 in D flat major. But the thing is that doesn't make sense because we still haven't hit the transition yet, which is the bar after that, and we don't hit the modulate until another 8 bars after that with the medial caesura. So it's kind of interesting to feel that little harmonic IAC like there, because it feels like it's both a part of the continuation that we just got finished in, and then also like it's part of the transition that we're going into. And you can listen to it right here, and it's really sort of conflicting as to what that chord is and where its alignment is. PAC. So yeah, it's really sort of confusing as to what it is exactly. All right. And so for my critical assessment, I've performed this piece before in Michigan in a summer music camp that I went to this past summer, and it's really a lot of fun to play it. There's a lot of important things you're going to need though to perform it well, like having a group that can listen to each other, of course, is testament to any good performance. But knowing your cadences and where they all lie so that everyone can get there harmonically together is really important to making things sound really tight-knit. And everyone has to really know like the motives and themes, because they just pop up again everywhere. and it's really important to know all of that. You're gonna need some good brass players, of course, but that's always a blast to have. And then I just really enjoy this piece. I really like it a lot. There's a lot of neat things like lyricism and voicing that Ewald does really terrifically between the brass instruments. Um, like he knows when to not cover up some voices and like how to make each voice be heard every now and then. And he does a terrific job of that. My favorite parts are probably the cantabile sections where each voice is just trading off that beautiful little line. Um, there's just a lot of really fun things about this piece to play, and I really like it. And that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe for more content. Just kidding. But I really hope you enjoyed my video. And right there is a picture of Victor Ewald. He's got a huge beard. He's Russian. And so thank you for watching. Bye.